It's Muffins, your DM for Carrion Crown, and this is my co-GM Darbee. Welcome back to Split Narrative, Episode 2. We're still talking about The Haunting of Harrowstone, Book 1 of Carrion Crown.
That we are, but now it's time to get to the prison itself. The town is in the past, looking forward to their main objective.
So Harrowstone sits on a few miles away from Ravengirl, um, and it's pretty easy for the party to just walk there. It's so easy, in fact, your party could go there immediately if they really wanted to. And when we were planning this campaign, that was one of our main concerns. It was, what if they just rush Harrowstone? What do we do then? Because Harrowstone is very difficult for a first level adventurer party. Um, Even tough for level 2, honestly. Uh, so what was your plan, Darbee? If they made it that far, like what did you think we should have done?
I think if they did rush right to Harrowstone, they would they hit the first few encounters if they're just walking in at least, they're not too much of a deterrence that would get them in, but they would quickly run into encounters that would be beyond their scope to handle. Luckily, just about every encounter in Harrowstone doesn't chase you.
Mm,
So you can kind of use that as a catchback where they can, someone goes down, they can, reposition them out of the room or shove them out of the way, shut the doors, and nothing pushes through that. Kind of giving them a little bit of a safety net if they're under rubbled.
mm. Give him a chance to run, and I mean that kind of happened anyway for our run of it. I mean,
It did.
yeah. So when the party gets to Harrowstone, they are met immediately by these massive walls that surround the prison. This section of Harrowstone you want to describe to really set the atmosphere and the tone that Harrowstone is going to have pretty much for the rest of the book. This place is large, it is abandoned, and it is just a sense of fear and dread that is just present throughout the entirety of this prison. Once you get through the walls, before you are able to enter the prison ground proper, it's really important for you to make sure the party is aware this place is very dangerous, and that can be done with descriptions, as well as some music. I ended up curating a full list of specific music for the grounds of Harrowstone, as they were kind of walking around it, going inside, and just setting the mood uh, in general for everything. But some of those from the soundtrack were primarily from movies like Nosferatu. I picked a few songs up from Yellow Jackets and just other, classic horror movies and such. Just set the vibe for this very spooky prison.
Once they get past those opening gate, they have this large field. They run into like some rats easily dealt with, some a swarm here to get them under their feet, and they get to see the warden's house that doesn't have anything in it per the adventure, but it is something you could use to do some storytelling. It's decayed, it's fallen down. You could have a cache in there if you'd like to help them like boast their almost their confidence to keep proceeding. And immediately after, you have the entrance to the prison with the overhang of the second floor that is kind of teetering, about to collapse, and the double doors. We thought maybe our party would immediately go through those doors, but we had hyped up Harrowstone as such a deadly place. They saw that and then the writings on the wall from the cult and just took it to like do a once around the prison, which ended up almost killing them
A few
because they didn't
times.
go into the front door.
Yeah. So there's, I believe, 4 entrances to the prison in total. The front door, which is by far the easiest way into the prison, to the left of the entrance, there is stairs that go to the second floor. And to the right of the entrance of the prison, you're able to kind of get around to go through the water, or climb vines to get to the top of the second floor again. And then also, the very back of the prison has a wall blown out that leads to the crematorium. We ended up going to every entrance except for the front door, which is kind of tough for them. Because some of those encounters when they're trying to enter this prison are super rough. Just like even talking about the Headsman's Scythe, which I think was one of the cooler monsters in this prison. It was a pretty brutal encounter. They discovered very quickly that when this thing crits you, it increases your dying condition by an additional value if you are down by it. And it's very easy to spiral in that. And I think we almost lost 2 PCs to that encounter alone.
Yeah, you were rolling really well that night, and they were not.
No.
And it really snowballed them. Um, and this was immediately after they had went around the prison and attempted to come in the back through the crematorium, which I had a third party exchange monster in there, Battlezoo's Hearthhound, instead of a kind of like a weakened Hellhound, I think is what you would probably normally have. And it hits a little above its weight, um, doing some AoE damage that was excessive, I think, probably for what we needed. And it had scared them off, and it led them right back into the scythe, which almost killed 2 of them.
After that, though, they went to the front doors. So that's good. I think it's important to be aware of how many entrances there are in Harrowstone. I was caught a little bit off guard by it because I didn't realize how many places they could actually enter the prison. So during my prep, I prepped a lot of I read in depth a lot of the beginning encounters by the front door, like the spiders, the door trap, the cold spot, um, things around that area. So when they ended up going to the second floor and the back of the prison, I was kind of scrambling to keep up and quickly read what the monsters did and make sure I was running everything correctly. So I would definitely be aware that there is multiple entrances to this prison, and you don't know where they're going to be going. They could very easily go to the top floor right away and run into the Piper. That is a complete possibility. Hopefully, though, they will clear out the first floor first. The first floor is pretty straightforward to run. You have some traps, you have some haunts, you got the spiders, the classic spiders in the dungeon. You have some pretty fun monsters in here. I thought the brands were pretty fun to run. There's a few encounters we didn't actually end up running in here, which I'm kind of bummed about, which was the manacles, the straitjackets, and we ran like half of the poltergeist. Um, a lot of the encounters on this floor, your party can skip or just not engage with, which you kind of just have to be okay with. Because, a lot of these rooms also don't have loot in them. And like Darbee mentioned, these guys will not follow you out of their rooms. So if they go in, they look, and they don't like what they see, they could easily just walk out of the room and leave it alone. And that's okay. There's so much in this prison that they have to do that it's alright if they miss a few encounters in there.
Yeah, they were so focused on finding the haunts of the 3 main murderers that they were like dialing in on that, self appointed objective, which kind of helped guide them too. When like they ran into something and they couldn't get through it, they're like, "Hey guys, it's okay. We don't even need that guy."
Yeah. They dialed in so hard to this objective that they almost missed a very important encounter on the first floor, which is the encounter with Visoriana. I was really, really nervous they would just skip this encounter entirely, and they pretty much did. They had no intention to go into that room with her at all. So they walked past her door about 3 different times, with not much inclination to go in there, and headed up to the second floor. I think that if you're going to be running this and you are worried your party will be missing out on Visoriana and skipping her and just going straight to the second floor, have her call out to the party. She does not provide a lot besides lore and a more clear objective to what the party needs to do. However, having that guidance will help them move throughout the prison and know that they're on the right path. Also, it just kind of fills in a lot of the lore stuff regarding what happened that night at the fire. So make sure they go see her. Have her call out to them, say, "Please help me, please help me." They open the door, they find her there, and you can have the RP conversation with her. Visoriana, I think, is pretty cool. I like her quite a bit. You want to make sure the party will trust her though, because there is a moment where I was worried they might attack her. So you want to just make sure that she comes off non-threateningly, and you want to make sure she's able to guide the party correctly.
Yeah, I think a way that you could do this, if you think your party might not fully explore an area or they're shying away from her section, is when they have the Piper fight or Welper or Forrest Charlton's fight. When you kind of get to the end of that encounter, you could probably have her almost flash over the essence of the haunt that you just put away, like her power, her essence, putting them back into chains, almost, since she's keeping them here locked away.
Mm. Yeah, just do something to make them want to seek her out. She's very important to this objective of the game, so we want to make sure she's able to give them the quest. There's nothing
The other,
else really on this floor, I think, that
well, I think
needs
you're
much.
slightly forgetting something,
Oh, I'm
and
forgetting
that's
something.
they're haunted items. They're
Oh,
cursed items.
right, right. How could I
The
forget?
keys to unlocking your party's power and letting them have a little taste of danger.
So these items are locked behind a door. Uh, the party can find them themselves if they'd like, but Vasoriana can also point them in the direction of that, or at least give them kind of guidance where that secret door is. The items are very cool, but not necessary. But goodness gracious, they saved the lives of the PCs in that dungeon. Each one is useful in its own way. The most useful one being the Lopper's Axe, having that ghost touch on there, as well as the Splatterman's spellbook. That really weakened him a lot during that encounter. These items are just really cool in general. I would almost say that maybe just tell them what they do, or if they go as Visoriana, she can tell them what they do and what their curses are. A lot of the time, sometimes players won't use items if they don't know what the curse is, so they're very hesitant to do so. And some of those curses aren't too bad. Some of them are pretty bad. Make them aware. I don't think you should hide that from the players. It's a very fun tool, and it's only going to be able to be used in this dungeon.
Once they've cleared out the first level, or they're ready to either go upstairs or downstairs. Upstairs is definitely easier than going down into the dungeon. There's not a clear way back up if you go down the dungeon, so they better have their ropes ready, their uh, helpful steps spell, or some ladders from the town to make sure they can get out once they get down there. Father Charlton upstairs is a interesting haunt. Once they interact with him or touch an item, his books, his leftover possessions in his cell, the the PC is kind of marked or haunted to be affected by Father Charlton going forward, um, and he kind of attacks. You could say it is an attack. He sends them into a dream, kind of vision state where he attacks their will, trying to convince them that everyone had left them behind, that they had passed out, and everyone else had left on and gone to the next adventure, that they'd finished up the stuff without them in the prison, all the while they're actually just wrapped in chains, slowly taking mental damage, while everyone is more likely in a middle of an encounter around them.
Hmm. I really liked Father Charlton. I think he's a really unique haunt. I may have cheated a little bit though, because as written, he is supposed to target a PC that is enters the room first or touches the book. I cheated a little bit on that. Previously, I talked a bit about tying the prisoners to a certain PC and having an encounter with the prisoners before going to Harrowstone. And I had decided that it was going to be a piece. Well, it was a specific PC, no matter what, who had that previous encounter with Father Charlatan. Just because I felt like it would be more impactful if they had already met with the father and had this interaction with him very briefly. I didn't have to fudge it too much since the PC I chose, which was Mira, entered the room already, and I just kind of, I know she entered the room already, and I just kind of was able to pick her pretty easily. Um, I just think it flowed better as a story beat, and I think Dom, the player from Mira, got a kick out of it too, which is pretty fun. So I didn't follow your rules, Darbee. Sorry.
Oh, that's fine.
It's a fun encounter because during this encounter, the most likely fight they're gonna be in is with the Piper. Um, I think the Piper's encounter is also pretty cool. I think I could have run it better. Unfortunately, during this session where we had the Piper and the Father Charlatan encounter, our map broke, so half my players were not able to see the map. So it really was tough having the Piper kite them through the map when the players could not see the map, which is kind of tough. You kind of have to adapt that and just improvise as you go. But I could have run that a little better, and I think it could have gone better. But what are you gonna do? I think overall it was a successful encounter. I really liked it. I think there was the Father Charlatan and Piper um, battles fit really well together as a duo fight.
Once you clear out the top layer, you're more likely you're going to level them to level 3, and they're ready to descend down into the dungeon of Harrowstone, where I guess the haunting of the Splatterman and his slowly of trying to kill Versiana takes place, and the PCs can finally strike back and finally put down these haunts for good.
The dungeon floor of Harrowstone, I think, is a really well designed map. It's very straightforward. When you go down to the dungeon map, you're pretty much immediately met with this common room that has three different exits that has different encounters behind them. Um, Once you get through the initial encounters of the ectoplasmic ghosts and the flaming skeletons, you were able to kind of pick a route. One of those routes does immediately lead to the Splatterman, and in the adventure, you can force open the door to fight the Splatterman right away. I don't think you should do that. I think the Splatterman works much better as a final boss and a capstone to the encounter. I did not even let my players roll to open that door. I did not want them to go through there because I knew they had a bunch of fights left to go to get to the Splatterman. I know that might be controversial, but for the sake of the narrative, I blocked off that section. I wanted the story to flow in a certain way, and I think it worked out for the best. If they're really persistent about getting to that door, though, players are gonna be players. Thankfully, mine got the
Yeah,
hint.
you can give them a carrot to help them with their objective. So if they want to go through the Nethermore door and the main entrance is kind of blocked, you can give them a carrot. They can go in the room adjacent to it where the guards were slaughtered, and there's a like a turn wheel where they would raise the gate, you can have like the lever has been broken off, and they need to find another one to replace it. And then you
Mm,
can place one of those in either Reaper's Hall or um, in the outlet where the Whopper is. And that way they have to clear out one of the other avenues to get the lever, and then that would at least put Spider-Man near the end.
yeah. The three ways you can go, the Nevermore, Reaper's Hold, and the Oubliette, um, they can be done in any order, but I prefer the Nevermore being done last, just because it's like the final boss fight, and I think it ends the book off in a good way. Our party ended up going first to the Reaper's Hold, which is where you encounter the Mosswater Marauder. I'm really not a big fan of that encounter. I did not like the Mosswater encounter. It felt very bland to me. It just felt like a very normal haunt. Um, I like the idea of it, like killing the heads to do damage to him. I just don't think it. I don't think it translated very well. If I'm being honest with you, it it wasn't a slog per se, but it felt very unmemorable compared to all of the other ghost encounters that the party goes through. I don't know what I would do to spice it up. I kind of feel like the Mosswater Marauder maybe should have been a creature instead of a haunt, but I also understand the want they were keep him a haunt because these are haunts.
Yeah, if he's I guess a monster or a ghost, I
Yeah,
guess you run the risk of him being very samey compared to the headless guard that's on fire,
yeah,
or the Whopper, which would be kind of similar, except one's an axe, one's a hammer.
mm,
It'd be very similar monster stats. Um, but yes, there's probably a way to just make that encounter more memorable.
yeah. I maybe more heads. Maybe that was the problem. There needs to be more severed heads.
Fair, fair.
Um, Once you fight the Mosswater Marauder, you have a few sections you can go through, which is to the north, which just kind of encounters a guard room, um, and then to the west, which encounters the main prison section, which is the actual Reaper's Hold part of it. There's no encounters in here, which I was pretty I don't want to say disappointed, but I was surprised by that they made this wonderful map with all these rooms, and there's no encounter inside. There's no there's nothing to really do here. And I got over that, and I decided instead to use it as kind of a tone setter that this entire section of the prison was abandoned because all the prisoners got out and they attempted to flee and failed to escape and all burned to death. So using this as a way to set the atmosphere once again with the music, the descriptions, I think will really um, drive home the isolation part of this adventure that these prisoners had to face. It The prisoner section is also right above the torture chamber, which I'm sure is great and very legal in Galarian. So once we're in the torture chamber, there's two encounters here. The first one is the Iron Maiden, and the second one is the Crawling Claws. Our party tackled this in a very unique way, and it's one I expected them to do, so I'm glad they ended up doing it. Um, After fighting the Headsman Scythe on the second floor, they kind of were traumatized for constructs. So as soon as they saw the Iron Maiden was a construct with construct armor, they wanted nothing to do with it. They left, they fled, and that's completely valid. The Iron Maiden isn't going to chase them. The claws aren't going to chase them. Um, they could, but all of the party seemed pretty intent on fleeing, and at that point, the Iron Maiden's movement speed is not high enough to even really pose a threat at that point. Um, they did end up coming back here under the disguise undead spell. It's the one that makes you appear an undead to creatures. Rules is written. I don't think it actually works in this situation. However, I thought it was a very clever idea. I felt like this would be the only situation it would really work in, if any. So I decided to let them have it and be able to get the gear from the warden, and explore a little bit in this room without the harassment of the enemies in here.
From there, they went back to the oubliette to kind of clear that out before turning their attention to the Nethermore. Which they had two very close encounters in the oubliette, I
Oh yeah.
feel. Mostly because I think two other party members had either one or two stacks of doom, and they were very terrified of getting crit and dying.
Yeah, I think this is the part of the dungeon where they realized they were in trouble. I had been trying to get them to leave and go back and rest before continuing on to the dungeon. Uh, I wasn't pushing them, but I was slightly hinting that they should probably go and rest because these doom stacks are going to be scary, especially when you're fighting Gertis, who was the head guard at Harrowstone Prison. There was a plot line regarding Gertis and the warden, which I was able to see throughout the prison. In the warden's office, they found a termination letter signed by the warden that said that he was firing Gertis because his unethical behavior and his treatment of the prisoners, which went above and beyond to horrendous. So this is where they find Gertis, who didn't get his termination letter. Um, there is no way for the PCs to know this is Gertis. He is a flaming skeleton. Um, I ended up having his token name toggled on by accident. So that's how they found out. And I was like, that's fine. Like, there's no way for them to know. It's not like Gertis can tell them who he is. So I was fine with that. It was kind of funny at the end of the day. But he almost did kill Matthias, our rogue. He crit him while he had doomed two, I think. And I really saw Matthias's life flash before our eyes. I really thought he was gonna die. I'm glad he didn't. He lived. But that was a very close encounter. It was a very simple encounter, but this is one of the only monsters in the prison that has a reactive strike. And I think that really took him by surprise. um, so it was pretty fun. It's always fun when you get them with a reactive strike when they're not expecting it, especially at level 3. But overall, it was a pretty cool encounter. I like that how he explodes at the end. It was pretty sick. I liked it. So we move on to the Lopper, who was in the heart of the oubliette. Um, Again, I like the Lopper. I did something a little different, I think, to what was in the book for the Lopper and how he attacks the party. They investigate the oubliette a bit, and they see that there is a body at the bottom of the pit. And I describe it to look like the Lopper, obviously, but it's dead, of course. Uh, I did this because I wanted the party to know that the physical body of the Lopper is in that pit. So when his ghost shows up, they know it's a ghost and it's incorporeal and it can move through walls. So when his ghost shows up, they were surprised he could move through walls, which didn't have the intended effect I was hoping for, but that's okay. I like the Lopper encounter. He's also pretty brutal. He's able to move through walls because he's incorporeal. Incorporeal. There we go. So he kited around. I think I had him target Matthias because Matthias originally had the encounter with the Lopper before we got to Harrowstone. Um, so again, Matthias almost died. It's okay. He's still hanging on. Um, there's also some really sick loot in this room that will help you later in the Splatterman. Um, but overall, pretty straightforward fight. The Lopper was a straightforward encounter. Very cool. Oh, they do find Gortys's skull as well in the oubliette, which again, the party would not know it is Gortys's skull, but the item is labeled as such, so it was kind of funny. We just kind of got a kick out of that. Some storytelling, environmental storytelling there.
And then they didn't leave.
And then they didn't leave.
They were so determined to be able to beat the dungeon without leaving once they got down here, and they thought they had enough resources to handle what was ahead of them. They had, some heals still left, some spell slots. They had a few marshals. They weren't really thinking they'd have to play it too safe uh, until they walked into the Splatterman's room and everyone's names started slowly appearing.
Yeah, so this was a very last minute idea that I had. Because I love the haunt in this room of the names all appearing. So what I ended up doing is I went in and I actually added the names uh on the actual map, and the letters would appear over time the longer the fight went on. I was very nervous about this fight. Um I don't know if you were too or not, Darbee, but when most of them walked in with doom stacks, some of them one or two, I was really convinced someone was going to die. Just to the haunt, not even to the Splatterman. Because if you fail these saves in a row, you're gonna die, and it's there's nothing I can do to stop it as a DM. um, I had to kind of hint to them that they should make recall knowledge checks on what's happening, because if they did not, they likely would have stayed in their room and just kind of died. And I think that's just kind of a symptom of a lot of us being fifth edition players, and we're not really used to making these recall knowledge checks, or maybe we didn't have an intelligence character in the party, so they weren't spamming recall knowledge checks. They
Yeah,
did.
or you
They sorry,
or
go
you
for
get
it.
used to like taking in 5e recall knowledge by interacting with the monster and not growing a recall knowledge per se. You attack it, it doesn't take fire damage. You attack it, its AC must be pretty high because I didn't hit it and I rolled so high. Recall knowledge without actually recalling.
Yeah.
So then you get to Pathfinder, and when you actually probably should, that they can infer stuff to you that is not just general knowledge. It's not really the first thing that comes to your mind. And it's also kind of like healing. It's a kind of a support action that
Hmm.
doesn't necessarily always feel good.
Yes, but it will save lives. So it's important to stress to your party that if they're not making these recall knowledge checks, they really should. I think that if they had not made these recall knowledge checks, at least two of them will be dead. Because I was able to give them the information freely that as long as you're in this room, you're going to be affected by this haunt. So a lot of them ended up staying outside the threshold. Maybe it wasn't as climactic as I was hoping for, but the actual fight in the room, I think, went pretty well. I like the Spider-Man. I like his magic. I'm a big fan of wizards being the final boss. The ability to cast Dispel Magic on just the stupidest thing and just be petty is just so fun. I think I ended up dispelling a bless from the cleric just because I could. Like maybe I should have made attack rolls, but I just like the idea of wizards being really petty, and that's pretty fun. I think the rat swarms were also a good addition to the combat. I think they provided some additional targets for the party because those rat swarms were doing work. Most definitely. I think
They
my
were they were keeping them busy.
they were definitely keeping them busy. I think this was a pretty successful final boss. I mean, from a DM's perspective, like I think it went as well as it could have been. Like I think the gosh, we could have lost like two PCs to this. I'm like surprised we didn't. I'm just so shocked at that. They did really well. They managed to kill the Spider-Man, take no losses, and survive, which is pretty great. Yeah,
Solid RP between him and some of the female characters, the ripping of his pages. We had it all, really.
yeah, yeah. I don't think this could have gone like any better. Like I'm pretty satisfied with it. Like as much as I wish that they were actually in the room making these doom saves, you know, if you got two doom stacks and the DM's making you do a save every round for another stack of doom, I wouldn't stay in that room. Are you kidding me?
It's essentially the same as the haunt from first edition, which
Hmm.
if they spelled out their complete name, it killed them, which is a similar mechanic but without doom.
I think it's a cool mechanic. I was a big fan of it. And once they kill the Spider-Man, they're pretty much done. They have managed to acquire the Warden's badge. All of the ghosts have been dispelled. They're ready to go back and see Vessoriana and report their progress. So, I love Vessoriana. I think she has some really cool art. I think she's a really cool lady. But, she can't really leave this prison. So, we decided to give the players a reward for completing this from Vessoriana. So, once the badge is returned to them, I feel like we're still kind of hashing this out completely.
She ends up taking a part of her soul and kind of emplacing it in each of the heroes that we're going to continue looking for her husband. That way she would know when they found him and she could get the satisfaction of reuniting with her husband without being able to leave the prison. And in exchange, mechanically, this would give them access to some deviant powers, mostly from the Wraith uh, tree line. Uh, we built out some. There's some homebrew feats in here to build out that list to make it more beefy,
And I think
and
it
it's
was a
something they can grow over time.
I think it was a pretty good reward for everything. I definitely wanted them to walk away with something because they weren't going to be able to walk away with the warden badge. So I also think it's a good carryover for all the books, like a good connective tissue for that kind of stuff.
Yeah, an alternative I guess you can do is once they leave and you have the same group going to book two, have the Pouncing Eye give them some sort of reward for completing other than just money and immediately getting rehired to do another task.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, kind of end rewards given to them, and now they can have their victory route. They can go back. The town can throw a party for them. You can have your epilogues before they plan to move on to book two if you're running it.
Oh, the letters.
Ah, yes,
I, I worked so hard on them. I have to talk
you
about them.
did.
So there's this wonderful thread on the Paizo forums, which is called "Letters from the Villain," I believe. I will link it down in the description here. It's so helpful. Basically, someone went through and they wrote a bunch of letters from the main antagonist of Carrion Crown, Endymion, and the way it works is that Endymion sends them these letters, basically congratulating them on their successes, being slightly annoyed at their successes, but kind of having some playful banter with them, which I think was pretty fun. So I kind of took this and went a little bit overboard with it, maybe. I ended up making actual physical letters for the players, printing them out on some old rustic fantasy paper and mailing them in a rustic fantasy envelope, complete with a wax seal to them. It was pretty fun. So all of the players received this letter from me, and it was awesome. I'll put some pictures up right here. Boom, boom, there they are. They were pretty cool. I like them quite a bit. I think the players got a kick out of them as well. It's also a fun little like physical item to have for your time at the campaign, which is pretty rad.
And that brings the Whispering Way kind of like back into the narrative, and
Mm-hmm.
they remind themselves of actually who started all this.
Yeah. Remembering that the Whispering Way is your enemy. And from there, we go on to book two.
So be ready to join us in a future episode where we cover the Trial of the Beast. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned.